Right now, as you're watching this, there's probably someone in the room next to you. Maybe it's your roommate scrolling through their phone, or your neighbor mowing their lawn outside, or a family member watching TV downstairs. You trust these people. You live with them, share space with them, feel safe around them. But what if I told you that the person you trust most, the one who has keys to your home, who knows your schedule, who you've shared your deepest fears with, what if that person has been lying to you from the very beginning? We all have that one person in our lives who seems almost too good to be true. The roommate who's impossibly clean and quiet. The neighbor who's always there to help at just the right moment. The family member who knows things they shouldn't know. We tell ourselves we're lucky to have them. We ignore the small red flags because, honestly, life is easier when someone else is taking care of things. But sometimes, the people who make us feel safest are the ones we should fear most. Today, I'm sharing 3 stories from Reddit real experiences shared by people who thought they knew someone, until they discovered the terrifying truth. These aren't stories about strangers or monsters hiding in the shadows. These are stories about the people who were closest to them. If you've ever had that nagging feeling that something isn't quite right with someone in your life, please hit that like button and subscribe. Your instincts might be trying to tell you something important. And I want to know, where are you watching from right now and what time is it? Are you alone, or is someone else in the house with you? There's something both reassuring and unsettling about knowing we're all sharing these stories together, wondering about the people sleeping in the rooms next to ours. Before we begin, I want you to think about that one person in your life who knows you a little too well, who shows up at just the right moments, who always seems to have the perfect solution to your problems. Hold that person in your mind because after these stories, you might start asking yourself, how did they know exactly what I needed? And more importantly, what do they need from me? Let's dive in. Liam was 26 and fresh out of a difficult breakup when he posted on his university's housing board looking for a roommate. The rent in his city was brutal, and splitting a 2-bedroom apartment seemed like the only way to afford living alone without moving back in with his parents. The responses were typical college students looking to party, people with incompatible schedules, a few who just gave him weird vibes. But then Benjamin responded. 28, graduate student, clean, quiet, and willing to pay first and last month's rent up front. They met at a coffee shop, and Benjamin was exactly what Liam had hoped for. Polite, well-dressed, soft-spoken, and respectful. I'm pretty much a homebody, Benjamin had said with a shy smile. I spend most of my time studying or reading. You'll barely know I'm there. He was right. For the first month, Benjamin was the ideal roommate. He kept his areas spotless, never left dishes in the sink, and was so quiet that Liam often forgot he was home. Benjamin worked from his room during the day, something with computer programming, and usually went to bed early. The only quirk was that Benjamin seemed to have no friends, no social life whatsoever. No one ever called or visited. When Liam asked about it casually, Benjamin just shrugged and said he preferred solitude. It was during the 2nd month that Liam started noticing small things. His food was disappearing. Not entire meals, just small amounts. A few slices of bread, some milk, half a sandwich he'd saved for later. When he mentioned it, Benjamin seemed genuinely confused and offered to pay for groceries to make up for any mix-ups. Then Liam realized Benjamin never seemed to cook or order food. Ever. The kitchen was always pristine. No delivery bags in the trash. No dishes beyond what Liam used himself. When pressed about what he ate, Benjamin became vague. Oh, I grab something when I'm out or I eat light. But Benjamin was never out. Liam worked from home 3 days a week and had never seen Benjamin leave the apartment during daylight hours. The really strange part started in month 3. Liam began waking up at night to soft sounds, footsteps in the hallway, the quiet opening and closing of doors. When he'd check, Benjamin's room would be dark and silent. But in the morning, things would be slightly different. A book moved on the coffee table, a chair pulled out at the kitchen table, the TV remote in a different spot. Liam convinced himself he was being paranoid until the night he decided to stay awake and listen. At 2:17 a.m., he heard his bedroom door creak open. Through barely opened eyes, he saw a figure standing in the doorway, tall, thin, unmistakably Benjamin. For nearly 10 minutes, Benjamin just stood there, watching Liam pretend to sleep. Then, as quietly as he'd entered, he left. This continued for a week. Every night, Benjamin would enter Liam's room and watch him sleep. Sometimes for 5 minutes, sometimes for over an hour. Liam was terrified but didn't know what to do. He hadn't been threatened, nothing had been stolen, and technically Benjamin was on the lease. Who would believe this story? He decided to set up his phone to record while he slept. The footage was worse than he'd imagined. Benjamin didn't just watch. He moved around the room, examining Liam's belongings, reading his journal, going through his dresser drawers. In one clip, Benjamin sat on the edge of the bed for over 30 minutes, just staring at Liam's face. In another, he appeared to be taking photos with his phone. But the most disturbing footage was from the final night Liam recorded. Benjamin entered as usual, but this time he whispered while Liam slept, "You're so peaceful like this, so trusting. You have no idea how special you are, Liam. How perfect. Soon you won't need to pretend to sleep anymore. Soon you can rest forever." Liam moved out the next morning while Benjamin was supposedly sleeping. He took only essential items and stayed with friends until he could find another place. When he posted his story on Reddit, asking for advice on how to handle the situation, the responses chilled him to the bone. A user named Sophie commented, "OMG, I think I know your roommate. Did he have dark hair, very thin, always wore long sleeves? I lived with someone exactly like that 2 years ago. Same thing, perfect roommate until the weird behavior started. I moved out when I found photos of myself sleeping hidden in his room." Another user, Hazel, replied, "This sounds like my neighbor from last year. Police got involved when other tenants complained about him visiting their apartments at night. Turns out he had copied keys somehow. They found a whole collection of photos and personal items from different people in his apartment." The most unsettling response came from someone named Nora. "I'm a private investigator, and this matches a pattern we've been tracking. There's someone who's been doing this in college towns across the state, finds vulnerable people who need roommates, becomes the perfect housemate, then escalates to stalking behavior. We think he's done this at least 8 times. Can you DM me? We need your testimony." Liam never heard back from Nora after reaching out. Her account was deleted a week later. But the story gets worse. 6 months after Liam moved out, his former landlord called. Benjamin had never officially moved out, but the apartment had been empty for months. When they finally entered to assess the space, they found Liam's room completely transformed. The walls were covered with printed photos, hundreds of them. Pictures of Liam sleeping, eating, watching TV, showering. Photos taken through windows, from inside closets, angles that should have been impossible. In the center of one wall, written in what looked like permanent marker, were the words, "My perfect Liam, until we meet again." The police were called, but Benjamin was long gone. The address he'd provided on the lease was fake, his references were fabricated, and the bank account he'd used for rent payments had been closed. Liam changed his phone number, deleted his social media, and moved to a different city. But sometimes, late at night, he still gets the feeling that someone is watching him sleep. Sophie had always prided herself on being independent. At 29, she owned her own small marketing consultancy and had just bought her first house, a charming 2-bedroom in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind of place where people waved to each other while mowing lawns and borrowed cups of sugar. Her next-door neighbor, Logan, seemed like a blessing. He was in his 50s, recently retired, and immediately offered to help with anything she needed as she settled in. When her moving truck got stuck in the narrow driveway, Logan was there with his truck to help. When she couldn't figure out the quirky old thermostat, Logan knew exactly how to adjust it. "The previous owner was my good friend," Logan explained. "I know this house inside and out. Anything you need, just holler." Over the first few weeks, Logan's help was invaluable. He knew which grocery stores delivered, which repair services were reliable, even which days were best for yard work based on the neighborhood's unspoken schedule. Sophie felt lucky to have such a thoughtful neighbor. Logan had keys to her house, She'd given them to him after he offered to water her plants during a business trip. He'd also mentioned that the previous owner had given him a spare set years ago for emergencies, but he'd returned those now that she was settled in. Except he didn't return them. Sophie started noticing small things that felt off. Her mail would be neatly arranged on her kitchen counter when she came home, even though she'd left it scattered on the hallway table. Dishes she'd left in the sink would be cleaned and put away. Her bed, which she always left unmade, would sometimes be perfectly made when she returned from work. When she mentioned it to Logan over the fence one evening, he seemed genuinely concerned. "That's strange, Sophie. You should be careful. Maybe someone's getting in somehow. These old houses, sometimes the locks are easier to pick than you'd think. I could install some better security for you if you'd like." Sophie agreed, and Logan installed new deadbolts, security chains, even a motion sensor light by the back door. But the strange occurrences continued. Then she started finding things that definitely weren't hers. A different brand of coffee in her kitchen cabinet. A book on her nightstand that she'd never purchased. A framed photo on her mantle of a woman who looked remarkably like her, but wasn't her. When Sophie asked Logan about the photo, his face went pale. "Oh my goodness, that's Margaret, the previous owner. She passed away about a year ago. I have no idea how that got in your house. That's really disturbing, Sophie. Maybe we should call the police." But Sophie had a strange feeling about Logan's reaction. Something in his eyes when he saw the photo, not surprise, but something else. Recognition? Sadness? She decided to do some research on her own. Property records showed that Margaret Wilson had indeed owned the house, but she hadn't died a year ago. She died 3 years ago, and according to the real estate records, the house had been empty for 2 years before Sophie bought it. So who had Logan been helping for the past 2 years? Sophie installed a hidden camera in her living room without telling Logan. What she captured made her stomach turn. Logan entered her house daily while she was at work. But he didn't just water plants or check on things. He cleaned obsessively, rearranged her furniture to match some specific pattern, and spent hours sitting in her living room just existing in her space. Most disturbing was watching him in her bedroom. He would lie on her bed, hold her clothes, and talk to someone who wasn't there. "I kept it just like you liked it, Margaret. Sophie's nice, but she doesn't understand the house like you did. She moves things around too much. But don't worry, I'm teaching her your ways. Soon she'll take care of the house just like you did." In one video, Logan was looking through Sophie's family photos. He removed several pictures of Sophie with friends and family, replacing them with old photos of Margaret. That's when Sophie realized the woman in the photo on her mantle wasn't just someone who looked like her. Logan had been trying to make Sophie's house identical to how Margaret had lived. Sophie confronted Logan the next day, showing him printed screenshots from the camera. His reaction was unlike anything she'd expected. Instead of anger or embarrassment, Logan looked relieved. "You understand now," he said calmly. "You see how much this house needs to be maintained properly. Margaret was so good at it, but she got sick. I promised her I'd take care of the house until someone else could do it right. You're learning, Sophie, but you still need guidance. Logan, you need to leave. Give me all the keys and don't come back." Logan's demeanor shifted completely. The kindly neighbor facade dropped, replaced by something cold and possessive. "This is Margaret's house. You're just visiting. I've been taking care of it for 3 years, and I'll keep taking care of it long after you're gone." Sophie called the police immediately. When they searched Logan's house, they found it was a shrine to Margaret. Rooms full of her belongings, her furniture, even her clothes arranged as if she still lived there. They also found detailed journals documenting every day he'd spent in Sophie's house. Every change he'd made, every lesson he was teaching her about how to live properly. The most chilling discovery was a timeline written on his wall. Phase 1, gain trust. Phase 2, establish presence. Phase 3, guide behavior. Phase 4, complete transition. At the bottom, in red ink, Margaret took 2 years to complete transition. Sophie is taking longer than expected. May need to accelerate timeline. Logan was arrested, but during questioning, He kept insisting that he was protecting the house and that Sophie was the intruder. He seemed genuinely confused about why anyone would see his behavior as wrong. The police investigation revealed that Logan had been doing this for years, not just with Margaret. He'd had special relationships with at least 4 previous homeowners on the street, all single women, all of whom had either moved away suddenly or, in Margaret's case, died under circumstances that were now being re-examined. Sophie moved out immediately and sold the house at a loss. She later learned from other neighbors that Logan had been telling people she'd moved away for work, and he'd been seen going in and out of the house daily, maintaining it for the next person who would appreciate it properly. When Sophie posted her story on Reddit, the response was overwhelming. Dozens of people shared similar experiences with overly helpful neighbors who'd gradually become invasive and controlling. The thread became a resource for recognizing the warning signs of what experts call residential grooming, predators who target homeowners, especially women, by offering help and gradually escalating their presence and control. Sophie's story went viral, but she eventually deleted her account when Logan was released on bail, and users began reporting that someone was asking questions about her in various local Reddit groups. She never found out what happened to Margaret. The case was closed as death by natural causes. But Sophie will always wonder if Logan's help had extended to hastening Margaret's transition. Mason had always known his family was a little different. Growing up, his parents were strict about certain things that seemed arbitrary, never answering the door after 9 p.m., never leaving windows open overnight, and absolutely never, ever going into the basement alone. Old houses have old problems, his mother, Hazel, would say when he asked. Some things are better left undisturbed. At 31, Mason inherited the family home when his parents moved to Florida for retirement. It was a sprawling Victorian that had been in the family for 3 generations, and despite its quirks, Mason loved the character and history. His younger sister Nora helped him move in, and she seemed relieved that someone was finally living in the house again. "It's been too quiet," she said as they unpacked boxes in the kitchen. "Houses like this need people in them, you know? They get weird when they're empty." Mason had grown up in this house, but now, as an adult living alone, he started noticing things he'd never paid attention to as a child. The way certain floorboards creaked at predictable times, usually around 11 p.m. The way the temperature in the hallway near the basement door was always noticeably colder. The way his dog, Max, refused to go near the basement stairs and would whine whenever Mason got too close to that part of the house. After a month of settling in, Mason decided it was time to explore the basement properly. As a kid, it had been off-limits, used only for storage and the occasional repair work that his father handled alone. Mason had vague memories of his dad spending hours down there, sometimes late into the night, but whenever Mason asked what he was doing, the answer was always maintenance. The basement was larger than he remembered, with several rooms connected by narrow hallways. Most of it was typical basement stuff: old furniture, holiday decorations, boxes of family memories. But in the back, behind a heavy wooden door he didn't remember from childhood, was a room that took his breath away. It was set up like a living space, not just storage, but an actual room where someone could live. There was a bed, a small kitchenette, a desk, even a television. Everything was old but well-maintained, and there were personal belongings scattered around: clothes, books, photographs. The photographs made Mason's stomach drop. They were family photos, but they included people he didn't recognize. A man who appeared in pictures with his parents, his grandparents, even some photos of Mason and Nora as children with the stranger. The man looked to be in his 40s or 50s, thin and pale, with an unsettling smile that never seemed to reach his eyes. But what disturbed Mason most was that in every photo, the family was posed normally, smiling, acting as if this man belonged there. In some pictures, the man had his hand on Mason's shoulder or was standing next to his mother as if he were part of the family. Mason had no memory of this person whatsoever. He found a journal on the desk, filled with entries in handwriting he didn't recognize. Day 3847. The family continues to care for me well. Hazel brought down my favorite soup today. The children are growing so beautifully. Mason is becoming quite the young man. Day 4102. Had to discipline Mason today when he tried to come downstairs uninvited. Hazel handled it well, told him the basement was dangerous. Good. The boy learns quickly. Day 4756. Nora is asking too many questions about the sounds at night. May need to remind the family about the importance of our arrangement. The entries went on for years, documenting a life lived in secret in Mason's family basement. The writer referred to Mason's parents by their first names, talked about family events he'd apparently observed, and described interactions with family members that Mason couldn't remember. The final entries were more recent. Day 6891. The family is moving away. Hazel promises Mason will take care of me now. She's explained the arrangement to him, just as her mother explained it to her. The tradition continues. Day 6903. Mason moved in today. He doesn't remember me yet, but that's normal. The transition always takes time. Soon he'll understand his responsibilities, just as his father did, and his grandfather before him. Mason dropped the journal and ran upstairs. He immediately called his mother, Mom, who was living in our basement. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Mason, we need to talk, but not over the phone. Can you come visit us this weekend? No, Mom. I need answers now. There's someone's belongings down there, photos of our family with a stranger, a journal that talks about me and Nora as if this person was watching us grow up. Another pause. Then, in a voice Mason had never heard his mother use, you weren't supposed to find that room yet. We were going to explain everything gradually. Explain what? Mason, our family has had an arrangement for a very long time. Your great-grandfather made a deal during the Depression. A man needed a place to stay, and in exchange, he helped protect the house and the family. It's been that way ever since. What are you talking about? What man? His name is Harold. He's been with our family for almost 90 years, Mason. He doesn't age the way we do. He's not entirely human, but he's not dangerous as long as the arrangement is maintained. Mason thought he was losing his mind. Are you saying there's been some kind of creature living in our basement my entire life? Not creature. Harold prefers family friend. And yes, he was there your whole childhood. He helped raise you in his way. He's the one who kept you safe when you sleepwalked as a child, who made sure no harm came to you or Nora. In exchange, we provided him with shelter and companionship. Companionship? Someone from the family spends time with him each day, brings him meals, talks with him, makes sure he's not lonely. It was usually your father's job, but now it's yours. Mason was shaking. Where is he now? He's always there, Mason. He's probably been waiting for you to find him. He's very excited to get to know you properly. That night, Mason heard the footsteps. Slow, deliberate steps moving through the basement, then up the stairs, then down the hallway toward his bedroom. They stopped right outside his door. A soft knock. Mason. The voice was warm, friendly, almost grandfatherly. I know this is all very new for you, but I've been looking forward to our time together. I've watched you grow into such a fine young man. Would you like to come downstairs? We have so much to catch up on. Mason grabbed his keys and drove to a hotel. He called Nora from the parking lot. Did you know? He asked when she answered. Nora sighed. I was hoping you wouldn't find out so soon. Mom said she was going to ease you into it. You knew there was something living in our basement? Harold's not something, Mason. He's family. Weird family, but family. He used to help me with my homework when I was little. When I had nightmares, he'd sit outside my room all night to make sure I felt safe. This is insane. Is it? Think about it, Mason. Did anything bad ever happen to our family? Any break-ins, accidents, serious illnesses? Don't you think it's strange that we lived in that neighborhood for 30 years and never had a single problem? Mason did think about it. Their family had been remarkably lucky, almost impossibly so. What happens if I don't? If I don't honor this arrangement? Nora's voice got very quiet. I don't know, Mason. It's been part of our family for 4 generations. I don't think any of us know what would happen if we broke the deal. Mason never went back to the house. He put it on the market immediately, but no offers ever came through. Real estate agents would schedule showings, but potential buyers would leave within minutes, usually looking disturbed or confused. One agent finally told Mason the truth. There's something wrong with that house. People say they feel watched, like someone's following them around during the tour. A few people swear they heard someone calling their names from the basement. The house has been empty for 2 years now. Mason rents an apartment across town and tries not to think about Harold, alone in the basement, waiting for someone to honor the family arrangement. But sometimes, Mason gets calls on his cell phone from his old house number. When he answers, there's just breathing on the other end, and occasionally, very faintly, Harold's voice. Mason, when are you coming home? I miss our family. When Mason posted his story on Reddit, the responses were unlike anything he expected. Instead of skepticism, dozens of users shared similar family secrets, arrangements, traditions, and family friends that had been passed down through generations. Some families cared for entities in their attics, others had arrangements with things that lived in old wells or root cellars. All shared the common thread of protection in exchange for care, and all reported that their families had been unusually lucky or protected throughout the generations. The most upvoted comment came from a user who claimed to be a folklore researcher. What you're describing sounds like a traditional household guardian agreement. These were common in rural areas during economic hardships. Families would make deals with non-human entities for protection and prosperity. Most people think these are just old superstitions, but there are documented cases of these arrangements lasting for generations. Mason never responded to any of the comments. His account went inactive shortly after posting the story. But users who lived in his city began reporting strange real estate listings, old houses that would go on the market, attract interest, but never actually sell. All the houses shared certain characteristics. They'd been in the same families for generations, they had unusual basement layouts, and potential buyers always left the showings early, claiming they felt unwelcome. Local real estate agents now informally refer to these as Harold houses, though none of them can explain exactly why. Before you go to sleep tonight, maybe take a moment to think about your own life. That helpful neighbor who knows a little too much about your schedule. That roommate who's almost too perfect. Those family traditions that never quite made sense. Most of the time, there are perfectly normal explanations. But sometimes there aren't. If these stories kept you on the edge of your seat, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into Reddit's darkest corners. And I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below sharing your own experiences with people who seemed normal until they weren't. Your story might just become the subject of our next video. Thank you for watching, and remember, the most terrifying monsters are often the ones who look just like us. Sweet dreams, everyone.